Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are. Thank you for joining me again today for another live Q&A session here on my channel. I always appreciate the time you guys take out of your days to spend with me and everyone else here in the chat. I appreciate y'all. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Angela. I am a full-time voiceover artist and audiobook narrator, and my channel is dedicated to those of you just getting started out in this wonderful world of voiceover and audiobook narration. And through this channel, I share with you some tips and tricks and techniques and things that I do every day in my own voiceover business. And then we get together in these weekly chats to talk about a topic or two, sometimes 10. We'll see how it goes. But if you're not new here, then you know every week we have a new poll, which is generally the topic of the day. We'll see how it goes. But today's topic is, do you struggle more with the technical aspects of audiobook production or the organizational aspects of audiobook production? And of course, as always, these questions or polls or topics usually come up because of the questions that I get in the weeks preceding. So I'm hoping that something said today will help to inspire you, help you to answer those burning questions that you've got about audiobooks, the organization of or technical aspects of. But so far we have 20 votes. Looks like 30% of you said technical, 25% of you said organization. It's almost a pretty even split. But the majority of you said I haven't produced one yet. So again, I'm hoping that we can help you guys out today. I'm trying to get a pulse on, based on the comments, as far as what the main questions are. I suppose if you have a particular question about one or the other, please ask. This is your opportunity to get not only my response, but everybody else in the chat as well, which is usually made up of, it's usually a good split between people who haven't and people who have produced audiobooks. So if you have a question, please ask in the chat. I was just seeing a lot of hellos, and ACX doesn't like stereo tracks. That's actually a really good question. ACX does say that you can have one or the other as long as all the files are in mono or all the files are in stereo. You can pick one or the other, but all the files have to be in that same format. The way I think about it is I've always submitted my files as mono, and reason being is that way the same sound comes across in either channel or both channels. So if you think about the people who listen to audiobooks, myself included, sometimes I walk around with one earbud in, right, while I'm doing chores, or it's really going to depend on what the listener is listening on. Maybe it's a Bluetooth speaker that has just the one speaker. Sometimes they're in their car, sometimes, so they have maybe full surround sound or multiple speakers. So I think about it I want the same sound and or quality to come through with whatever device the listener is listening on. So I always go mono. But as far as I remember, unless ACX has changed something since the last time I looked, they do say that you can have the files delivered as either stereo or mono, again, as long as all the files are in that same format. Organization. Organization for me, and I started this right in the beginning with having a folder on my desktop for each platform that I was on. Every platform that I offered my services on, I would have a different folder for on my desktop. So one for ACX, one for Fiverr, one for Upwork, one for VO Planet, one for, so on down the line. And then another folder for my own personal clients, right? Direct clients, or wherever the source came from. And then within that folder, I would have a separate folder for each client from that source. So within ACX, I would have a different folder for each book I was working on, and then a different folder for, Upwork or any of the other places, my direct clients, each one would have a folder within that. And then you could even go as far as to have a different folder within that folder for just auditions. And then if it turns out to be a job, you can move that audition into that client's folder just to keep everything together. So if there's ever anything referenced, like if the client said, well, in the audition you did this, that way you would have the audition with that corresponding job within that same folder. Same thing goes with all of the raw files, all of the finished files, all of the revised files. You can even have a separate folder within that folder for anything revised. But getting into the habit of doing that early on has really helped me to keep on top of where everything is. Because if you don't develop those habits early, then you might end up losing files along the way. Now, I know that some of the DAWs, I would imagine all of them, and I don't know, I haven't used all of them, so I don't know for certain, but for Adobe Audition anyway, you can look up recent files, like files that you were working with recently, and then open those. So if you accidentally save a file to a folder and you can't remember where it went, or you weren't sure of where it went and you can't find it, you can just go to that recent files and then you can pull it back up and then save it to the appropriate place. Same thing goes for if you have any character sheets or images or references. You can keep all of that information within those appropriate files, those corresponding files as well, or folders rather. Yep, I'm seeing some really good stuff in the comments. So let's go over to the comments. Again, if you have anything specific regarding technical, because as we know, there's a lot of variables here to contend with in terms of technical and, well, organization. Maybe it's just me, it's pretty straightforward, but some people really struggle with specific things regarding technical or organizational. So if you have a specific question or something to offer, constructively, then please put it in the comments. But let's get over to the comments and see what we got going on today. So first in, you were here before I was even here this morning. PSV Odyssey. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Paul in Arkansas, good morning. Got second audiobook to produce last night. Congratulations. Congratulations. That's always a good time. Because once you get that first book done, your confidence is boosted. You know that you can do it. You have a good idea of how long the production process is going to take you, right? And then you submit it and everything's good. And then you get that second one. There's nothing like that feeling. So congratulations, Paul. Our organization and productivity guru, Dwight. Good morning to you, Dwight. Good morning, Angela and fellow lurkers. May your noise floor be low, your voice be on point, and your enthusiasm high during your VO studio time today and every day. I think what we should do is write that down on a sticky note and stick it on your computer monitor and look at that every day. It's a good habit anyway to start the day with something positive. Even if it's not going positive, tell yourself something positive. It just sort of sets the tone for the day. That's awesome. And then Dwight says, congrats to PSV, or to Paul. That is great news. Paul Landergan is here. Good morning. Good day, Angela et al., and greetings from a gloomy and chilly Essex, UK. Just completed 2 chapters, around 65 minutes of current book today. Breaking it into chunks. That is another question, actually, that brings to mind another question that I get a lot regarding what sort of process to record and or edit audiobooks. Is this technical or organizational? I guess it could be both. But what I do when I first get an audiobook and I've already read through it, I've already made any kind of notes to myself, asked any questions of the author that I needed to. I know everything I need to know and I'm about to start recording. What I'll do is I'll go to the table of contents page and I'll use that as sort of my guide as to how many files I'm going to need. Now, keep in mind that the opening credits to an audiobook is its own file. The introduction, the dedication, if the rights holder wants the dedication included, if there's a prologue, if there is anything preceding the main body of the book before chapter 1, those are all going to be separate files. Now, just a side note on that really quick. If there is a dedication or if there is anything preceding the main body of the book or even after the main body of the book, mainly like acknowledgments about the author, other titles, anything that doesn't really have anything to do or tie into the book itself, ask the author or the rights holder if they want those also included. And if they do, then make sure that your pricing reflects that total word count, right? And also, those will also be separate files. Now, if you are an avid audiobook listener, as you all know that I am, most of the time about the author, sometimes dedications, other titles, stuff, back matter sort of stuff that doesn't really tie into the main body of the book is generally not included, but it's ultimately the rights holder's prerogative if they want it included or not. It's their book. So if they want it included, then be sure to ask those questions and make sure that you have those files included. Back to what I was starting to say about the table of contents, I'll use that as a guide as to how many different files I'm going to need and what they're going to be named. So generally, I start out with the opening credits, the introduction, the prologue, if there is one, and then whatever else there is, right? And chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, so on and so forth down the line. And then an epilogue about the author, if they want it, or anything else, acknowledgments, other titles, anything like that. And then the closing credits these are all going to be separate files. Now, if there are subsections or subheadings within the chapter, those all remain within that chapter. You're only looking at chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. The only exception to that is if a singular file exceeds 2 hours, because you can't have a file that's over 120 minutes long, including that half a second at the start and up to 5 seconds at the end, right? If it exceeds that 120 minutes or 2 hours, then you might need to find a spot where you can cut that file in half. So you might have to have chapter 1, part 1, chapter 1, part 2, and 2 separate files, but that rarely happens. But I think I've had it happen to me maybe once, where a chapter exceeded 2 hours and I had to cut it in half. I think I touched on everything I wanted to touch on there. If you have any questions about that, then please ask. Okay. Eric is here. Hey, Eric. How you doing? Sorry I can't join today, but by the time you read this, I'll be face down on a massage table. Ugh. Just rub it in. Rough life, I know. You knew I was going to complain about that. Have a great show. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate you. Paul Landrigan says, my main tactic for organization is to create a spreadsheet for each project, do a word count per chapter, then break it down into chunks of around 8,000 words to 10,000 words. That'll actually give you a good idea of how long each chapter is going to be. And I just reminded myself that I didn't really finish my point before about when to edit and when to record. So I usually will start by creating all the files based on the table of contents. Sorry, I got distracted. Squirrel. Starting using the table of contents, I will open all the files, name them appropriately, and then I'll record them when I can or when conditions are right. Meaning conditions are right, like the heater's not on, the neighbor's not mowing his lawn, there's no airplane circling overhead, there's no, elephants in the next room. And then I'll edit when I can't record. So there really isn't you need to record this many in a day and then edit this many in a day. It's really going to depend on your schedule, and everybody's schedule is different. So if you can record a couple chapters and then you'll have to edit them while it's noisy, then do that. Or pick a day where you do nothing but narrate, and then the next day you edit. Or you can narrate the entire book and then edit the entire book. It's really up to you and what your schedule will allow you to do, right? I do like to alternate, meaning I'll do some recording and then some editing to give myself some time to rest. That's generally like how I like to do it. But then I also live in the desert where in the summertime, the air conditioner's on like 90% of the time. So I'm having to record in short bursts and then do a lot of editing while the air conditioner's on. But it's really up to you and what you can accomplish in a day. Paul says, with the aim of completing that amount each working day. That way I can see how much I've done and how far I have to go. Good. So it gives you sort of an idea of how much time is left, how close to the end you are, and then you feel a sense of accomplishment when you see how far you've gone. Dwight says, regarding the poll, I used to have some issues with organization and tech, but I have figured the organization thing pretty well once I understood basic challenges and growing list of things to do. I am a tech guy, so the tech thing took a bit, but I am starting to get the current sound tech and usage pretty well also. And just like with anything and how you always hear me say, it just comes with time. The more you do it and the more you experience it, the more hands-on you are and the more you get into it and you find ways to streamline all of your processes. You'll just generally get faster. You'll understand it better. It just comes with doing is where we see the most progress is in the doing. So just get in there and do it already. Dylan says, I got to click on it first. Dylan says, good morning, all. Since I had Caesar build my effects rack, I haven't had a bit of trouble with with the technical stuff. I am, however, very disorganized. I think you're probably more organized than you think you are. I think you're more organized than you think you are. So if you're feeling disorganized, then I'm hoping that something I've already said or something that someone says during the duration of today's get-together will help. But I think you're probably more organized than you think you are. Tim says, as far as the poll, if I have to pick one, it would be organization. Yes, you do have to pick one. But I have enough issues with the technical side as of late with Studio One wanting to render stereo tracks. I wonder if you can turn that off. Is anyone familiar with Studio One? Can you turn off that preference to just render in stereo? Or do you have to select mono each and every time? Even if you do, that's just something, it's just one of those things that you're just going to have to remember to do every time. I wonder if you can turn that off. I know with Adobe Audition, whatever you did last or whatever you did the last couple of times, it will just revert to that setting. So you don't have to keep changing the settings every time, or format settings, I should say, of the file that you're opening, recording, so forth. I don't know if Studio One does that. Pardon me while I tap stick. Tim says ACX doesn't like stereo tracks as far as I understand. Am I wrong? I saw your comment earlier, and that's what prompted me to answer that question. But are you having an issue? Is ACX telling you that there's an issue with stereo tracks? Is it not wanting to upload? What brought this question about was what I wanted to ask. Is ACX asking you to save it as mono instead? Or just an issue with upload? Joel says, hey, Angela. Hi, everyone from West Michigan. Good morning, Joel. I'm digging your TikTok channel. Keep it going. Tall Latin Mama. I love that username. Good noon from North Carolina. I'm not late, but I brought donuts anyway. I love it. Just because. And cheesecake. Sitting here drinking in all the wisdom. Well, I'm hope there's some to drink. I hope you're not parched. But thank you for the cheesecake and the donuts, girl after my own heart. Kristen is here. Good morning, Kristen. Hello, Florida D. Joel says definitely organization, but still both. Yeah, organization. I think of the two, the technical side was probably a lot more challenging for me because there was a lot more minutia involved with it in terms of it was a delicate dance to find the appropriate settings to make sure that my RMS fell within the correct range, that my noise floor fell within the correct range, and once I understood the peak amplitude thing, and I think that throws a lot of people off too. Keep in mind that the -3 dB peak amplitude is not the goal. You just cannot exceed it. So don't try to manipulate your files to hit -3 dB. You just need to be under it. And remember, these are negative numbers. So anything that is -3 and bigger, a bigger number, is fine. As long as you don't surpass or exceed -3 dB. So meaning if your file lands in -2 point anything or a smaller number, then it's too high. Then your volume's too high. But you're not you're not trying to achieve -3 dB. You just cannot surpass it. So just take that off the plate altogether. As long as you're not louder than -3 dB, then you're fine. I think that's a misconception. But it was definitely more of a challenge, I think, the technical side for me. But again, once you learn it, once you understand how the effects work together in most cases, because too much of one effect on top of another effect can change the way that you sound, right? So getting the right order of things and then finding ways for everything to work in harmony, and then the end result landing you in the appropriate ranges that you need to be in was the hardest part, without you sounding like complete garbage, the audio quality just sounding horrible after it. It took some time. It definitely took some time. Dwight says, I didn't bring donuts, but I did make apple and French silk pie. It's one of my favorites. Does that, yes. So I can expect you here at what time with the slice of pie? I'll take, is it Dutch apple pie? Because of all the apple pies, Dutch is my favorite, Dutch apple pie. But I will never turn down a French silk pie. Sean Lester, this was another question that I saw. Organizational aspects. My organizational technique is audition for the first 5 on the list when I open it up. It's good practice. Sometimes I get a contract. So do you mean like if you were to open up ACX, you just choose one of the first 5 and audition for it? Is that what you mean? Sorry. Let me turn my phone notifications off. Don't need that distraction. It doesn't take much. That's actually a good, is that organization or is that productivity? I think that would fall more under the productivity umbrella, right? Forcing yourself. Maybe forcing is the wrong word, but if you're on any platform at all, as long as you are what they're looking for, right? So if you're male, you see male. If you're female, you see female. If you have this accent, you know what I mean? If your voice is appropriate for that audition and one of the first, you audition anyway for one of the first 5 that you see, I think that's a good practice. I think I might steal that. Thank you, Sean. Steven Sound says, file organization is pretty easy for me. I do all audiobooks, year, author, client, series, book, render date, and rendered files. There you go. There's another way to do it. Definitely very specific, too. I don't do, well, I guess year would be good. That actually would be really good because generally for me, every 6 months or so, I'll take everything on my computer and move it to external storage, to an external hard drive. So having everything by year, too, would definitely help to find things. If I had to go back and reference something, or if a client lost a file, I could go back and retrieve it for them. It's actually good. I might start incorporating year, too. Thank you for that. David Brumfield says, hello from Hamilton, Ontario. Kathy is here from San Diego. Rustic Hillbilly says, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Turkey Day to you, too. Rustic Hillbilly. I hope everything is... was it snowing in Oregon? I think I heard it was snowing. I don't know what it is here today. I think it's going to be 70-something today here in Phoenix. Peak Parable says, I separate auditions by year, month, and day. If I get a job, and then I move audition to book file. Well, there you go. So then you have an audition file and then a book file, a booked file. Florida D says, organization. I accepted too many jobs without being realistic. Give that another go. I accepted too many jobs without being realistic about how long it would take to complete them. I've stopped auditioning and I'm tracking how long it takes me to narrate. Well, I guess having too much work that's a good problem to have. You might have to have some uncomfortable conversations with people asking for some more time if they have the more time, but I mean, it's a good problem to have, having too much work, right? Could lead to burnout if you keep up with that, though, but I think that's better than having none, I suppose. And that actually brings up to mind a question I hear a lot is, should I wait for the rights holder to respond to my first audition, or should I keep auditioning? And if I keep auditioning, what happens if I get multiple job offers? If that happens, then just schedule the books back to back. Or if they are the types of book that you could perhaps schedule them or complete them simultaneously, depending on how big and what kind of books they are, obviously. But, I mean, if you end up getting 2 offers, then you tell the first person, heck yes, let's go, right? And then you solidify all the details with that one. And then maybe perhaps you get another one behind it. You can then tell that person, well, I can be available on X day. I can start your book on X day and have it done for you by X day, right? Just schedule them back to back. I've never had anybody tell me that, no, I won't wait. I won't wait. But again, good problem to have. Peak Parable says, this may be overkill, but storage capacity is always my concern with backup copies on external drives. So in case of accident, or one thing I like to do is put a number of 1, 2, 3 in front of file name for order I want it in, so alphabetical order does not automatically jumble the files. That may not be in my desired order. Yes, for external storage, I think that is where perhaps having, I would say, going back to, I think it was Stephen Sounds had said about incorporating the year folders. I think before you offload everything to external storage, you could create one folder with perhaps the month range in that year that these jobs were done in, put them all in there, and then move that one singular folder over to external storage too. So if you have to go back and retrieve something from last year in November, then you could go to external storage and go directly to that folder and then find it in there. So you could really get precise with how you're organizing these file folders. I think I might incorporate that. Because I have hard drives, external hard drives that are by year. Like I have a little label maker and I put a label on it. This is from this month this year to this month this year. But trying to find something specific within a specific time frame might be a little bit more difficult doing it that way, unless I can go into the device and actually find a specific time frame. I might actually start doing that because that would probably really help find things faster. JCC BCL AOL says, happy Thanksgiving, Angela. Happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Turkey Day's in a couple days. Tim Gleason says, so far my biggest challenge is consistency in delivery and sound from one recording session to the next. And that is completely normal too. God. Every day our voices change. You know, the time of day, how much you've maybe warmed up beforehand, how much dairy you've had the day before. I mean, I'm having issues now. Our voices differ through different periods throughout the day, every day. So that's kind of normal. But I think, again, in the practice of finding sort of your, what is referred to as your money voice, or the voice that you're recording in, I think once you go back and hear the previous chapters, you might be better able to match. But even, and I think I know exactly what you're talking about, even with the effects, they sound different from file to file to file. And I think that comes from the actual length of the file. Because effects being applied in certain percentages to an hour-long file versus a 15-minute-long file is going to affect what it's being applied to a little bit differently. Like the effects might be a little bit heavier on the shorter file than they would be on the longer file. So I think there are going to be small little variances from file to file to file. But ultimately, I don't think it's going to be noticeable to the casual listener. I don't think our listeners are going to pick up on that all too much. And even if they do, I don't think they're going to care. As long as they can still follow along and they're still enjoying the story that they're hearing, I think it's going to be fine. So again, I think it really just comes down to being in our own heads way too much and overthinking things that ultimately don't matter. Right? It's the same thing with mouth noise. It's the same thing with breathing. It's the same thing that we tend to overthink about that ultimately probably doesn't matter to the listener. They're just more engaged in the story and what they're hearing versus, the little things that we think are troublesome that aren't, in the end. Paul says, Angela, FYI, the 120-minute chapter length is ACX specific. For Authors Republic, there's a 78-minute limit. Thank you for bringing that up. Most of the audiobook distributors are going to have the same technical requirements in terms of, actually, I don't want to say they are going to be the same. They're all very similar, but to Paul's point, you definitely want to check the specific requirements of that distribution platform before you submit the file. Because ACX is, the file limit is 120 minutes, Authors Republic is 78, and I'm sure ultimately just make sure that you're submitting the appropriate formatting standards for each distribution platform. Thank you for bringing that up. Stephen Sounds says, to Peak Parables, I always number my files as 01, 02, etc., so they can be in exact order. I do the same thing. I start at 00. Opening credits is always 00, and then 01 is usually the introduction or the prologue or, whatever is preceding chapter 1. And then 02, 03, so on and so forth. But that is a great way to do it. That way they are listed in the order on your computer. And then also when you upload them, you can just simply tell the client if it's off of ACX, specifically if you're sending all the files to the client for the client to then upload. You can just tell them, don't tell them that, but tell them that they are numbered in the order in which they are to be uploaded. That usually makes things easy, because the number is the first thing that you see in the file name is the numbers. So if you just tell them follow the order of the numbered files, then they'll be fine. Joel says, also starting to look for recommendations on proofing sources to save time software. There is Positron. Is it Positron or Positron? Either way, that is a great resource for proofing. It is not a free service. I think there may be a trial or a certain amount of hours of proofing that they will give you for free. But I've heard a lot of great things about Positron. I personally don't use it. I know of it. But that is definitely something to look into. Basically, you upload the manuscript and you upload your audio files, and it'll go through and proof, making sure that you say what you're trying to say. Or you can always outsource and hire a human to do that. You could probably find some humans to do that for you on Fiverr or places like that. Or if you have a group, like we do with my Platinum group, we have, in our Discord, we have a group of people who are willing to proof for you or to do things like that. So if you don't have the time, or you just don't maybe have the ear to catch these things, want an unbiased ear to catch these things, then you could go that route. Reading Time with Poppy says, Alex here. I don't quite understand the question, and I got here late. I owe you donuts. Well, at least you remembered that you owe donuts, so you're excused. I have to listen back. I'm producing an audiobook this morning, not paid, unfortunately, but good practice. What do you mean not paid? You mean like royalty share? That's still paid. Not paid up front, but eventually, yeah, you'll still be paid. Or are you doing something for free? Any which way you look at it, it's good practice. It's good practice. I think most people, when starting something brand new, I think we forget that, maybe we don't forget. Maybe we ruminate on it too much that we're brand new and that we aren't worth, what we should be paid because we are brand new. I think I'm trying to pump the brakes on a tangent. But ultimately, going through the entire process, paid or not, is more valuable than anything else. Because then you learn what to do, what not to do, what you should do, what you shouldn't worry about, how long things are going to take. And then the confidence that you gain from doing it and proving to yourself that you can do it is ultimately priceless. And if you're getting paid on top of that, that's just a bonus, right? But learning that you can, in fact, do it because you probably, worried about hitting the RMS range, or you worried about, being able to edit or just to get it done on time. And you did it. And now you know for certain that you can. That is worth everything, paid or not. Suzette Matar says, is it wrong for me to outsource the editing? No, not at all. Not at all. There's a lot of, myself included, there's a lot of audiobook producers who have been in a pinch where maybe perhaps like someone had said earlier about having too much work all at one time. Because sometimes it just, the planets align and you have like 7 books in queue and, due dates are approaching and you just don't have the time to edit, or you just don't want to do it. Or maybe it's just too cumbersome. It's too... the tedium you just cannot stand. You cannot stand the editing, don't know how to do it, whatever the reasoning. You can always hire someone else, another audiobook producer that perhaps has the time and experience to do it, to do that for you. Absolutely. It's not wrong, but just know that that's just another cost that you're going to have to contend with. Because depending on what you need done and the person you're hiring, their experience level is going to determine how much per hour that's going to cost you. So just keep that in mind. That's an additional cost that may even, especially in the beginning when we're not making a whole lot, that might, outpace what you're actually making on the book. So I always push you guys to learn to do this stuff yourself, because you'll be better off in the long run and you'll be able to keep all of those profits for yourself. Not only that, but those skills are valuable. Those skills to do that are valuable. You could offer those skills in other aspects, in other audio editing endeavors, right? Learn how to do it. You'll be better off. But if you just don't want to, that's fine too. But just keep in mind, it's probably going to cost you. Reading Time with Poppy says, hopefully I will be able to put the book up on my YouTube channel. Oh, that's cool. Tim Gleason says, conditions are right, like being under approach at Dulles Airport at rush hour, like when I get up to 30 seconds between flights. What do you, I see when I was talking about earlier about recording when conditions are right. Yes. Yeah, some things you just can't overcome. And unfortunately, those are the times where you're really going to have to go, okay, I may have to build a soundproof booth, or I might have to repurpose something online like a I want to say audiology, but like when they have those booths where they can check your hearing, and then they sell them on OfferUp or Mercari or Craigslist or something. Or if there's something that you can build that is soundproof. I mean, you might have to come to the point where you just say, I really want to do this, and I have to invest in something that I can make soundproof, because there's no way that I can get anything done under these conditions, right? Yeah, that stinks. Sorry about that. Kathy says, I finally was able to record my own children's book and finally got it to pass all 3, waiting to see if it gets the okay from ACX. Well, good for you. So you wrote the children's book? I love it when authors narrate their own books. I do. Kathleen says, hello. I brought donuts too. We had a lot of donuts today. And chocolate lava. Oh, chocolate lava cake with vanilla ice cream. Oh. Gluten-free. Oh, I don't know if I want gluten-free, though. If you're going to eat dessert, eat the dang dessert. Eat it as it's meant to be. But I understand some people have allergies. Your day job restaurant? Oh, I bet you it's good. Tim says, first 2 chapters were mono, but the next 2 were produced on a new machine, and ACX flagged them as... Oh, okay. Don Barnes mentioned supporting or exporting a stem, and that seems to work. Working a permanent fix. Yeah, I think that's the only thing that I'm aware of is that if you choose mono or stereo, all the files have to be the same. So, but I generally like to have my files in all mono. Roy DeBohan says, hi, Angela from Idaho. It's snowing and it's beautiful. Good morning, everyone. It would be nice to have a white Christmas, but I'm sure for you guys that deal with it all the time, you're like, no, I'm good. I'll pass. Reading Time with Poppy says, speaking of noise floor, anyone know how to fix a too low noise floor in post or pre for that matter? If it's too low, you might be either A, inserting silence instead of natural room tone, or you're adding too much of a noise reducer. Keep in mind that when we talk about adding effects to your effects racks, and you'll see tons of videos here on YouTube of people talking about ACX's standards and how you can fix noise floor issues. And if they're talking about adding a noise reducer to control your noise floor, and so you just think that it's standard, it's not. If you don't need it, don't use it. If you don't need a noise reducer, then by all means don't use it, because adding effects that you don't need is just destroying the sound of your voice anyway, or making your noise floor too low. Because I think most of the time when ACX flags it as too low, it's usually one of those two things. You're adding noise reducers where you don't need them, or you're inserting silence instead of noise floor, to adjust timing or to cover up or to replace, I should say, breaths or anything like that. Don't use silence. Use room tone to do that. Steven Sound says, but what about the loudness wars? Gotta aim for 12 plus dB RMS. Are your files coming in too low for RMS? If that's the case, then turn up the gain on your microphone. That usually will help. Or you can just manually turn up the file volume a few dB every time if you don't have any more gain to turn up. Or you could get like a preamp or something like that that will allow you to have additional gain when you're recording, right? So your microphone gain or your interface gain, if that's what you mean. Dwight says, my apple pies are often mistaken for and compared to Dutch apple pie because of the size, amount of filling, and my secret spices. And yes, some are traditional and some are used in Dutch baking. When I think of a Dutch apple pie, it's got like the cinnamon sugar crumbles on top. That's what I think of a Dutch apple pie. So does your apple pie have that on it? Like the cinnamon sugar crumbles on top? Like the little crunchies? That's what I'm thinking of. Lisa says, good morning from snowy, cold, and cloudy Alberta. Listening to this session while putting up my sound dampening moving blanket in my closet studio. Good for you. Good for you. That's awesome. Florida D says, yes, the conversations were difficult, but the rights holders, with one exception, have been very understanding. That's good. Well, that's good. I think, for the most part, not everybody's going to be flexible, but I would say 99% of clients that I've had to deliver news to where, there was a timing issue of some sort, most of the time they're pretty amicable. They'll be like, okay, you're human. Human things happen to humans. Sometimes lifes. And there's, things out of your control. Most of the time they're understanding. Eric Grimes says, I do 001_ title and so forth for opening credits and so forth. I do 101_ title for chapter 1 and so forth. I use 515_ title for 15-minute sample and 505_ title for 5-minute sample. Interesting. So a completely different naming convention. I mean, ultimately, do whatever it is that is going to make sense for you to help you organize better. Whatever makes sense for you. There really isn't like a right way to do it. As long as it has all of the elements that audiobook distribution platform is looking for and that it meets those requirements, then do what you gotta do to stay organized and stay on top of everything. Reading Time with Poppy says, my dream years ago, parallel with doing VO, was to share the reading time I have with my kids and more people. So my first producing is to share. Thus the channel name. Next will be for pay. Well, that's cool. So your YouTube channel name is Reading Time with Poppy, I have to assume? Everybody go check it out. Kathleen H. Gluten-free lava cake. Recipe needed. I just want to eat it. I just want to eat it. I don't need the recipe because I don't need the ability to go make it myself. I just don't. No. Stephen Sound says, quick note about soundproof booths. If you build it right, you will get better reduction and less cost 100% of the time from a permanent structure than a whisper room, studio bricks, etc. Yes. But not everybody has the ability or the wherewithal to build their own studio. But I wonder, even if you were to hire someone to build it for you, that might even still be cheaper than buying a whisper room or a studio bricks booth. I don't know. You might have to check it out either way and see which is more cost effective for you. But also custom booths could also be the thing if you have limited space or a very odd shape or a low ceiling or something that a pre-made booth can't fit, right? You might have to have a custom booth made. Steven Sound says, but a prefab booth is good if a permanent booth is not an option for you because of your housing situation. Exactly. A custom one might be better suited for you. And you can build it to spec or to what you need or to your height to, if you would like to sit and stand, you can have the room for that versus one or the other. So having a custom booth built would be more ideal, to make it specific to you and your needs and your situation, the environment that you have to work with. Kathy says, I worked with the help of people at ACX. I watched videos on YouTube. No matter what I tried, it affected one or the other of the pass-fail. I actually gave up for about 6 months. Where's the continuation? I don't see the continuation. Same. I was in, although I didn't throw in the towel, but same. And that is probably one of the most frustrating things because there's so many variables, again, to everybody's booth size, shape, the equipment in it, the microphone being used, the DAW that you're using, the effects that you have available to use within your DAW. There's so many different variables that someone else is just kind of like shotgunning ideas at you to try to get things to pass or fail. What you really need is someone to work one-on-one with you, like via Zoom or something like that, where they can tell you specifically based on your individual space and situation and what you have available to you to help you achieve that appropriate amount of effects or, perhaps turning up the gain, turning down the gain, microphone positioning. There's a lot of different elements that come into play that can affect whether you pass or fail your the ACX's standards or whatever distribution platform you're working with. And that is very frustrating because in the beginning we don't really understand how everything works and how just individualized, of a situation that each one of us is in. So I think at some point I said the same thing. I said, okay, I'm ripping out all my hair here. What do I need to do? I eventually figured it out, but then after that, I ended up working with an audio engineer, and then some of the things that he showed me, Tim Tippett's, some of the things that he showed me made a whole lot, like something just clicked for me, and it made a whole lot more sense, and then I was able to, better understand my DAW and how to manipulate things to have the end result sound good, and then also to meet all of the standards for whatever platform that I needed to meet on my own. So, but I think, Kathy, for you, it sounds like you might need to have someone work with you one-on-one for your own specific situation instead of someone maybe, just giving guesstimates, for you. Steven Sound says the plus 12 dB RMS is a reference to I Won the Loudness War. Oh, I didn't know that one, which is currently the loudest song ever. Sorry. Dwight says, reading time with Poppy. If you use Audition, you can use Mix Paste to add a room tone to the entire file. Be sure your room tone meets standards. Set RT file and actual file inputs to 100%. And then we're talking pie. My pies are flaky crusts, but also do apple crumbles like you are describing on my everyday pies. Oh, God, I'm hungry. Dwight says, to those producing audiobooks who want to put them on YouTube in entirety, you will have problems with ACX because they do not allow that. I ran into that myself with my current book project. Yeah, I'm sure there's something in the contracts, and this also is a great time to bring up the whole contract thing. Whatever platform you're on or whatever client you're working with, if there's something that you're signing your name to, agreeing to, acknowledging, read it, understand it. Make sure that you understand, all of the terms, meaning what time frames are expected, what pay types, and, when you're going to be paid. All of the, everything is understood. Everything is understood, and that you can abide by it, right? Basically, read through everything and understand it before you sign it. And that goes with anything. Reading time with Poppy says, no books up yet, but very, very soon. I promise. I'll let you know. Anything that does check it out, or anyone that does check it out, thank you. And friendly criticism is welcome. Kathleen says, LOL, the lava cake is yummy, but sorry, it's pre-made from U.S. foods, so no recipe. That's okay. We'll still eat it. Kathy says you missed the previous post. I didn't see one. The last one I saw of yours was this one. I worked with help at people, and I do see that it was continued, but it's not here. If there was a link or a word in it that maybe perhaps YouTube filtered out, but it's not showing for me. Kathy says, yes, I finally had to give up on using my Blue Yeti mic. Using another mic solved some of the problems. Equipment can definitely change the way that we sound, for sure. Dylan says, my 13-year-old daughter and I are currently building my booth. She wanted to learn carpentry. So far, I've taught her framing, drywall, and how to use a nail gun, electric drill, table saw, and level. Well, that's fun. I think everyone should learn how to use basic tools. I mean, we all need a little bit of engineer in us, Dwight says, the custom booth I built cost me about $2,500 in materials and another $1,000 for innards like acoustic foam, lighting, custom built desk materials, etc. Electronics not included in that price. Worth it. Yeah, I think prefab or pre-made booths can cost you, God, how much is a whisper room these days? I think depending on if you go double wall, triple wall, size, shape, they can go from what, $3 to $4 grand to plus like 10 plus, right? Even for studio bricks, I think their VO Edition, correct me if I'm wrong, last time I looked was a while ago, but their VO Edition booth, this is the booth that comes to you in pieces and you put it together like Lego set, right? It's in chunks. That one is what, like $6 grand. So if you can build one yourself specific to your specific needs for a fraction of that, why wouldn't you? If you've got the room for it. David says, sound booth idea. Do you have a cold storage room under your front porch? That is where I am, concrete all around except for door. Took door apart and added particle board to add mass. Very quiet. Yeah, I guess this room is sort of similar to that, although it's not concrete all around. I don't even know what this room is intended for. It's like a 5x6 room. I don't know if it's supposed to be like an office or storage. I don't know, but now it's my studio. Kathy says, I did finally... Okay, good. Dwight says, my average noise floor is -83 to -85. FYI, I even had to take some of the foam down to remove the boxiness from my recordings. Yeah, it's trial and error. I think most everything we do with this is just trial and error. Or if we just hire someone to figure it out for us and then just tell us how to fix it. But that's not super cost effective. But a lot of trial and error in this for me, I know. Reading Time with Poppy says to Dwight, thank you for the advice and the heads up. Dwight's very good with that. Dwight says, the pictures of my booth are all on my website. You have a very impressive studio. You've got like 4 or 5 monitors. I've got monitor envy. I have one in here that's like 30, it's like a 32-inch curved monitor. But there are so many times where I kick myself for buying such a large monitor, because then I don't have any room on either side in here to put another one in here. My only other option is to have one above, but then I'm going to have to be looking up and looking down. I guess that's not that big of a deal, but I would love to have more than one for many different reasons, especially when we're doing our group meetings and I have 10 different tabs and I'm trying to, flip between. Multiple monitors would be nice. Would make my life easy. But anyway, that's it for me today, guys. If there is anything that you guys want to talk about or any other topics that you would like to explore more in depth, audiobook or just general voiceover related, then put it down in the comments. If you're watching this as Team Replay, thank you so much for watching, and please hit that like button and consider subscribing. I really appreciate it. It just tells the algorithm that what I'm saying is entertaining, at least, maybe informational, but then it'll push it out to other people looking for this information. So for that, I thank you. I don't think I have anything else for you, but for those of you in the U.S., happy Thanksgiving, which is coming up in a couple days. And I'll see you guys all next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. I'll see y'all then. Bye.